I keep trying to call him Robert. It's not Robert. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Crue Trime. Crue Trime. Crue Trime. If you are new here, hello and welcome. My name is Sarah, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day and put on my makeup at the same time. So if that sounds like fun to you, you're in the right place. So make sure you subscribe to this channel, hit the bell notification, one of these sides, and then that way you will never miss one of my terrible stories. So we're still kind of coming down from that crazy popular video from a couple weeks ago. So I wanted to shift gears and just sort of like enjoy a terrible story. And also, part of this story remains unsolved, friends. This is the story of Ronald Langer. I keep wanting to call him Robert. It's not Robert. Sarah. It's Ronald. All right, and I'm trying to use things that I haven't used in a while today. So, and by the way, I don't really feature the items that I use as I'm using them, but if you're interested, look down in the description box. Girl, everything's linked. In the early morning hours of February 28th, 1987, 21-year-old Jennifer Hummel was on her way home after a night out with friends. She was driving on the Taconic Parkway near Campfire Road, which is in Newcastle, New York. And Newcastle, for context, is about an hour and a half north of New York City. So Jennifer had already been pulled over once that evening by a New York State trooper who suspected her of drinking and driving. He had administered a breathalyzer test to her, but she registered as below the legal limit for alcohol consumption, so he let her go. Jennifer even said later that she did not feel impaired at all. And not like, oh, I've had 2 drinks, I'm not impaired, but like for real, not impaired. Don't drink and drive, friends. Anyways, as I mentioned, Jennifer was driving home, so I guess that state trooper, thought that she would be fine to make it the rest of the short trip. Well, before she knew it, Jennifer saw flashing lights behind her once again, which is pretty weird. Well, the second police officer that pulled her over was Sergeant Ronald Langer of the Briarcliff Manor Police Department. All right, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Sergeant Langer wasn't supposed to be patrolling the parkway. It's essentially like not his jurisdiction. So the Taconic Parkway technically travels through many small towns in upstate New York. Anything outside of New York City is upstate, I guess. The entirety of the parkway, including that deserted stretch that runs through Briarcliff Manor, is under the purview of the New York State Police. So what was he doing pulling her over? When Sergeant Langer pulled her over, he told her he didn't believe that she was okay to drive, and he had her get into his patrol car. Okay, well, I'm not a police officer, but isn't that weird? Also, if a breathalyzer test indicates any alcohol level at all, the police do have every right to just stop you from continuing your journey, so I don't know. Anyways, you would think that he would have administered some kind of roadside test, stand on one leg, test how steady she is on her feet, stuff like that. No, just right into the patrol car. And these days, the advent of body-worn cameras would have made that stop on the record, so to speak, but this was 1987. Okay, so once Jennifer was in his patrol car, he started driving around and talking to her. Nothing about her driving abilities, where she was coming from, how much she'd had to drink, none of that. This conversation was all about her personal life, if she had a boyfriend, stuff like that. Jennifer later said that he drove them to the Croton Reservoir. Croton? And parked alongside a wooded area. Then he started sharing with her how he was underappreciated at his job and how badly he was being mistreated at the department. He told her he'd been shot in the line of duty and he didn't get the recognition that he deserved. He also went on to say that Jennifer was a really good listener and how much he enjoyed spending time with her. Bro, she's not a listener. She's detained in your patrol car. So then Sergeant Creepo told her how pretty she was and that he'd like to take her out on a date. What is happening? Okay, so aside from being wildly inappropriate, Jennifer said that she immediately got scary vibes from him. She would later testify that she felt like she had to tread really lightly with him. You know what I mean? Like, real sketchy situation. Even though he was making her very uncomfortable, she was trying to hold it together, which, you know, by the way, all of us have learned to do from a very young age. Am I right or am I right? Have you ever been in a situation where you just have that vibe where it's like, I better just be cool, man, or this is not gonna be a good situation for me? Well, this young 21-year-old girl, young lady, she was so intuitive, and so much so that she listened to her gut, her spidey senses. She was honestly just really afraid of what might happen if things got to a point where she would have to refuse him. She told him that she had a boyfriend, but he didn't seem to give a shit, and he started to slide over towards her in the seat, and then he tried to kiss her. She pulled back, but she tried really hard not to show disgust, which is really what she was feeling at the time. After the kiss, she asked, "Could you please take me back to my car? I really need to get home." She told him that her mom was waiting for her, and if she didn't get home soon, her mom would definitely report her and the car missing. Remember, Officer Creepo says that Jennifer is too impaired to drive, so he instead suggests that they go to a diner to have coffee. I mean, at this point, Jennifer is like fully kidnapped, but he's still trying to close the deal. Jennifer makes it clear she doesn't want coffee, she doesn't like coffee, and she just really needs to get home. Ronald drives them to the diner anyways, and then he went inside and got the coffee and brought it out to her in the car. She said she drank that coffee as quickly as she could and then asked again, "Could you please just take me back to my car?" Finally, Ronald relented and took her back. When they got back to where her car was parked, he opened her car door and she got out, and then he pushed her against the car, forced himself on her, kissing her. She just froze and repeated to herself over and over, like, it's almost over, just a few more minutes and I'll be free and I'll be alive. She knew that if she like physically fought him, she'd be dead. Well, before he let her go, he insisted that she provide her cell phone number. Cell phone. There's no cell phones. He insisted that she give her phone number, which she did. Her real actual phone number, too. Jennifer. Rookie. Anyways, at that point, she just wanted it to be over. So as soon as she got in her car, she locked the doors and drove away. When she got home, she immediately told her mom, and her mom was adamant that they not report the incident. Infuriating. I guess, you know, this was 1987, so sexual harassment wasn't really brought into the light as it is these days. And perhaps her mom was just scared of what might happen to her or even their family in the way of retribution. Retribution. What we do know is that Jennifer did not make a report to the police, and Ronald did not issue her any kind of citation. Okay, so this kind of interaction with Ronald was like his signature, or it became his signature. He would pull over some beautiful young woman, accuse them of speeding or swerving on the parkway. He would sexually harass them for various lengths of time, from like 10 minutes to hours, and then he would let them go without issuing a ticket. So with Jennifer, although she had clearly indicated that she was not interested and she said she had a boyfriend, Ronald started calling Jennifer and was leaving messages on her answering machine. I still can't believe she gave him her real phone number. But then also, he called her. This is like back in the land of actual answering machines where they use little tiny cassettes to record. You guys remember this, right?
Believe it or not, George isn't at home.
Anyways, he was calling to ask her out on a date, and he would sometimes plead with her to give him a chance. So she would later testify that she initially just deleted the messages and was just trying to ignore him. But he would not stop calling her. So one time she actually called him back to tell him to stop calling her. Well, he finally did leave her alone, and she had almost forgotten about him until she saw the December 1988 issue of the Journal News, where police had named Sergeant Ronald Langer as the prime suspect in the murder of a 24-year-old woman. The woman also looked a lot like her, a woman that had gone missing on the Taconic Parkway and was found on the banks of the Croton Reservoir the day after she had been stopped by Ronald Langer. Who was this woman? Sherri Orofino was born on November 21st, 1962 in Queens, New York, and she grew up there with her parents and one brother. Sherri was described as easygoing and a lot of fun. She had lots of friends and everyone loved her, thought that she was very kind and thoughtful, just like a really nice person. She married a local Queens boy named Paul. They actually grew up together. When Sherri went missing, they had actually been married for a little over a year and they were looking forward to starting their family. In July of 1986, Paul and Sherri moved out of the city to Millbrook in Dutchess County, where Paul had opened a recording studio. Paul knew that operating his recording studio would be cheaper there and they wanted to have kids one day, and live someplace where it was a little bit safer. So a band had reserved Paul's studio for a month straight and he knew he'd be working past midnight most nights. So Sherri went back to the city to stay with her parents and visit some friends. On March 1st, 1987, Sherri decided to cut her visit a little bit short. She missed Paul and she headed back to Millbrook, but she never made it there. Paul went to the police in Millbrook and Queens and they both initially told him that she hadn't been gone long enough for them to do anything about it. They eventually did file a missing persons report. At 8 a.m. on March 2nd, Sherri's car, a black 1987 Toyota MR7, was found on the side of the road on Route 134 in a very rural area of Yorktown, New York. There was no sign of struggle, the doors were locked, and the keys were actually inside the car. Sherri had last been seen wearing a yellow blouse over a black tank top and black jeans and a black leather jacket. Well, the state police handled the investigation and they focused on Paul, of course. In these kinds of cases, it's very often the husband. Paul underwent multiple interviews, interrogations, and he submitted to a few polygraph tests, which he all passed. Anyways, the family told the state police that Sherri was too street smart to just pull over for anybody who wasn't, police. Meaning, like, she wouldn't have stopped for a hitchhiker or a person with a broken down vehicle. She wouldn't fall for any of that. The police investigated straight away, right? They set up roadblocks in the area that Sherri's car was found, and they stopped and asked drivers if they had seen anything from the previous night. More than one witness from the area said that they had seen a blonde woman had been pulled over by a police officer around the time that Sherri likely would have been passing through. Well, the initial problem was that no citation, no ticket had been issued for Sherri, nor was her information entered into the state trooper's computer system. As they continued their search, they also were searching the woods, trying to find her. So around the same time, some women started coming forward with common complaints. They were reporting having been pulled over on the Taconic Parkway under the pretense of drunk driving, swerving, or speeding, but instead, the cop sexually harassed them. 5 different women filed official complaints, very similar to Jennifer Hummel's story. They were all young, beautiful, blonde, and driving sports cars. The officer insisted on them getting into his patrol car. Some he tried to kiss, and most he was able to get their phone number from. None of them were issued citations. And these are just the ones who came forward, so we can imagine how many more there were. Sherri Orofino was missing for months. The police pleaded with the public to come forward with any tips or information that could help. It did result in numerous leads, but nothing ever turned up. But then on August 9th of 1987, Sherri's fully decomposed skeleton was discovered near the Croton Reservoir. Croton Reservoir. A father and son that were fishing nearby had gotten their line snagged on, near the water, so they followed it down into the weeds and they found a skull. When the police arrived, they found a great deal of scattered bones that they determined was probably done by animals. There was no clothing on or near the body, but her wedding ring was found. They were able to identify that skeleton as Sherri using dental records, but the medical examiner was not able to determine a cause of death because of the condition of the body. Due to the lack of clothing, the police believe that the murder probably started as a sexual assault. So as investigators started to close in on who had been pulling over these women on the parkway, an officer was finally identified, Ronald Langer. One of the women who came forward was actually a New York City police officer named Fran Calderon. She said that she had been pulled over. She had not been swerving or drinking or speeding or anything. She was just guilty of being beautiful and driving a sports car and being blonde. So immediately when she was pulled over, Fran showed Ronald her badge, told him that she was on the job. He told her that she had been doing okay on the straightaways, but he was worried about her on the curves. Okay. Fran pointed out that the road was very straight where she had just driven. So, okay, Ronald. She had just gotten off work and he asked her repeatedly if she had been drinking, which of course she had not. He did not ask her to get out of the car to perform any kind of sobriety test. And after about 15 minutes of conversation, he let her go. Well, Fran was very creeped out, obviously, and she thought about what would have happened to her if she wasn't a cop. It was obvious that he didn't have a valid reason to pull her over. The next day, she told her state trooper friend about it, and he said that she should file a report. And that is what turned that spotlight on Ronald Langer. Langer was interviewed several times about these stops, and authorities said that he lied repeatedly. Of course, he denied everything. No, he wasn't pulling over people. What are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. Well, when he found out that one of the complaints came from NYPD Fran, he changed his story. He said he had pulled over some people, but only if they were driving erratically or speeding. Well, remember, the Parkway is under the patrol responsibility of the state police, so not the village police, and he shouldn't have been doing that. And if he found a motorist with an issue, he was supposed to contact the state police. Well, when it came to Sherri, he said he was unfamiliar with that area that Sherri's body was found. So what do we know about him? Ronald Langer was born in 1954 and graduated from Hendrick Hudson High School in Montrose, New York. Well, Montrose is a tiny little village in New York, and it's the same location as the Croton Reservoir. So him saying that he was not familiar with that area is a load of baloney. Anyways, after high school, he attended Mercy College and received a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and behavioral science, like a dual major. Then he entered the police academy, and in 1977, he became a police patrol officer for the city of Peekskill, New York. He later moved to the Westchester County Police Department, or Sheriff's Department, and by 1979, he had moved to Briarcliff Manor Police Department as a patrol officer, and then in 1986, he was promoted to sergeant. So after Sherri Orofino's body was found and NYPD Fran came forward, Ronald officially became a suspect in December of 1988. By January, he had been suspended by the police force, and here's a fun fact. As the investigation into Sherri Orofino was ongoing with the New York State Police, Ronald received a promotion to detective sergeant. Because of that little promotion, he felt like he had support from the department, and it wasn't until the media got a hold of things that things started to fall apart for him. Well, he quickly resigned from the department on February 2nd, 1989, just before a hearing by the Board of Trustees that was going to consider charges that could lead to his termination. In later interviews, Ronald likes to point out that he never was fired. So after he left the police department, he worked for a security company in New Jersey, but he was fired from that job when they found out that he was under investigation. For a short time in 1990, he moved out to Nevada, and he started working for the Nevada Probation and Parole Department. Within a few months, he actually lost that job for the same reasons. Suspect in a criminal investigation. That'll do it. On December 18th, 1990, Ronald Langer was arrested on federal civil rights charges. When the case went to trial, all 5 women testified that they were afraid for their safety during their traffic stops and detentions. All of them except for NYPD Fran. She testified. She just wasn't afraid. Ronald was accused of illegally stopping and detaining 5 female drivers, one of them on 2 occasions. Each stop took place at night on a deserted stretch of the Taconic State Parkway in Westchester County under the pretense of enforcing intoxication and driving laws. And after pulling them over and detaining them, he would accuse these women of committing traffic violations like swerving and speeding and all of that. He would interrogate them about any drinking they may have done that evening, but he never issued a single ticket to any of the victims. In some cases, he made sexual comments or advances. Each woman also testified that he insisted on getting their phone numbers, and he called them all repeatedly. Regarding the Jennifer Hummel incident, he explained the forceful kiss at the end of the encounter, according to her, was her being thankful for him helping her. Gross. Regarding NYPD Fran, Ronald said that was an entire setup. She must have been used as bait to get him to pull her over, and that stop was under surveillance. But, no video was ever turned over to him because that stop was much shorter than they had claimed. Okay, Ronald. Well, after a 5-day trial on May 13th, 1991, Ronald Langer was convicted of 6 of the 9 counts involving the 5 women. He was convicted under Section 242 of U.S. law, which makes it unlawful for anyone to, quote, under the color of law, to subject any inhabitant to the deprivation of rights. Basically, because he illegally detained them regardless of his intentions, illegally detaining these women was a severe infraction of the 4th Amendment, and it was constitutionally significant conduct. He was sentenced to 6 consecutive 1-year terms and 1 year of supervised release. That was the maximum sentence for each charge. Of course, he appealed, but the appellate court denied it, saying, quote, our decision today is intended as a sharp warning that the courts of the United States are not powerless to punish egregious conduct of lawless police officers who violate the civil rights of citizens under the color of state law. We love to see it. Ronald served 30 months in federal prison, and then on April 29th, 1994, he was released. He lived quietly for a few years, and then he applied for a job with the Department of Labor. He checked the box that said that he had been convicted of a crime, but in the handwritten comments to explain it, he just left out all the details about, unlawfully pulling over motorists. He also denied ever having resigned from a job to avoid being fired, so we know that ain't true. By 2002, the now twice divorced Ronald Langer married a very young exchange student from Poland. And by the way, if you hold her picture up to the other women from the traffic stops, our guy has a type. Between 2006 and 2008, he worked for the Department of Transportation before transferring back to his job at the Department of Labor in Endicott. In 2012, he was given a promotion to Senior Unemployment Insurance Hearing Officer. So the research indicates that he's still working there, and he said he hadn't expected to seek out work in the public sector, but he had, quote, too many years in the system to throw away. Oh, so he gets to keep his years toward federal retirement. Isn't that nice? Ronald Langer has paid his debt to society and is a free man. But what about Sherri Orofino? The death of Sherri Orofino couldn't be directly attributed to Ronald Langer due to the lack of physical evidence. Ronald has done a few interviews over the years, and he has spoken about the case. He says that he has lived under the burden of wrongful convictions for crimes that either didn't exist or that he didn't commit.
Sure, Jan.
According to him, he has no link to Sherri Orofino, and it's doubtful that the truth will ever be discovered about the case. You can say that again, Ronald. The investigation into Sherri's death is still ongoing, and if you have any information that you think could be helpful to solving this case, please consider contacting the New York State Police Department. The information to contact them will be listed down in the description box. And that is the story of Ronald Langer. All right, again, if you're interested in any of the makeup that I used in today's video, I will make sure to link it down in the description box if it's still available. If it's not available because it's incredibly old and discontinued, I will link something similar. If you have a Crue Trime story that you would like to recommend to me, also down in the description box is the link to the Google Doc to collect all of the gory details. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for hanging out today and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this one, then consider subscribing to this channel before you leave today. I upload new videos here on YouTube every week, and you can follow me on most of the other socials. That is it for now. I will catch you next time in the next video. Bye! Let's see if I can replicate that angle. Down in this... Langer? Langer. Langer. Does that look good? I can't tell. December. Langer. Am I recording? I'm recording. Those do not match. Why can't I get centered? Oh, no, fall out. Paul. Nope. If you're interested. Blah, blah, blah. Hi.